Welcome to the Tech Blog Writer Podcast, your guide to future tech trends and innovation in a language you understand. Now, over to your host, Neil Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Blog Writer Podcast. Today's episode is for all the bootstrapping entrepreneurs and tech startups out there. What motivates you to get up in the morning? What is your purpose? And if you came into a huge amount of money, let's say 2 million, what would your plans be then? If you just said, I'd be either drinking cocktails on a beach or just taking it easy, ask yourself again, would you really? Because I think we all need to push ourselves and have that purpose, that spring in our step, and grow as a person, and maybe even try and make a bit of a difference on this little planet of ours. Now, if you think I'm talking complete nonsense, or I've had probably a little bit too much to drink, I wanted to introduce you to the president and co-founder of a custom software design and development company called the Devbridge Group, that he helped build from absolutely nothing and bootstrapping his way to a nearly $40 million technology powerhouse with over 350 employees across 5 global offices. And to top it all, the icing on the cake, he won the Entrepreneur of the Year award recently. But now he's done that and he's achieved so much, do you think he's going to sell it all and just sit on a beach or a boat in the middle of the ocean? I think we already know the answer to that one, but buckle up and hold on tight as I beam your ears all the way to Toronto, where the co-founder of the Devbridge Group is waiting to speak with us about tech, startup life, and so much more. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Of course. Thank you. Thank you for having me. My name is Aurimas. I'm the president of Devbridge Group. And we're an international company that focuses on enabling businesses through digital transformation. And it really, if we skip the jargon and all the other mumbo jumbo, it's really just making great custom software that allows organizations to be better, to operate leaner, faster, and enabling the business with technology. So that's what we are.
I think you've been slightly humble there because I believe that you've just been named the EY Entrepreneur of the Year in the Midwest. So big congrats to me. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. It was humbling. It was unexpected too. When we went to the event, there were quite a few great large companies there. I mean, they're market leaders and American Family Insurance companies of tens of thousands of people in them, and so we really like being in that presence and then within that context of all of those businesses that are really successful. And it's the reason I had enjoyed the event, and I guess the reason why it matters to us is because it's not just about an individual. And even though I get to go there and take it and get the reward, but it's really about the performance of the company, because they look at the growth, they look at the financials of the business, and they look at the health and even the predictability of growth. So they look at historical financial data across multiple years, and they kind of look at what the vector or the target of the organization is. So it's and we're a people's business, right? We have professionals that do professional services, consultants, and so for us, the performance and the results really are a direct result of the team doing what they do really well. So it's exciting for myself. Again, we're really proud of the business, and obviously it's kind of our baby. But at the same time, it's a terrific award to share with the team, because it's their accomplishments that they're recognizing, really.
So did you have a speech prepared? And equally, did you have that I'm just happy to be nominated face and a clap as well along? Did you have that going on?
Yeah. Oh, you mean like a speech prepared for the?
Yeah.
I did not. No. And you know what was worrying was that when the first so they award multiple individuals at the ceremony because they select categories. So we were in a tech category that when we were awarded within the tech category. But there were others, and when they started the proceedings, and I saw people going up on the stage, and they did the whole, like, it almost looked like Oscars. They were pulling out sheets of paper and I'm like, oh, I'm so unprepared for this thing. Like, if that were to happen, I am just like not in a good spot. But luckily, the tech category, because it's alphabetic, it's at the end, right? T. So I had some time to brainstorm as I was sitting there, and then again, maybe starting to have a sliver of hope that we could win this thing. I was said, well, in that unlikely chance that we do win this, I need to scrap something together.
Love it. What a great story. So for anyone listening then who are hearing about Devbridge Group for the very first time, can you just set the scene of what problems you solve for your customers, and also what makes you guys unique from all those other companies out there?
Sure. we center around an industry vertical. So all of our solutions, or kind of our managing directors and our practice leads, they center around industry vertical. So we really do a lot of heavy lifting in financial services, and that's really an area of ripe with opportunity from tech and mobility and all of the emerging technologies as well as manufacturing, logistics, distribution, healthcare, and so on and so forth. So within each industry and vertical, there are quite a few different opportunities, and we kind of, based on the vertical, we decide what we do in those businesses. One big one, and I think it's relevant again if a lot of the audience is in UK and in London, and financial services, that is probably one of the major verticals that we operate in, and that's the reason why we're in London and Toronto and Chicago, and we're kind of looking at New York and Singapore as the future expansion steps. But a lot of opportunity in financial services, and specifically, the landscape of how people manage their money, how businesses manage their money is drastically changing, and I think banks are on the verge of really commoditization, because simply storing someone's money and providing someone with access to money and the ability to pay someone is becoming less and less. It is like plumbing, right? It's like the company that provides water into your apartment. You don't really care who it is with. So banks are seeing a lot of customer attrition or even customer fluidity, where a customer transitions from one leading bank to another and vice versa. So just talking about banking specifically. So what we see in the industry and the opportunities are, well, how do banks actually build on top of those core services? How do they build additive services that potentially have analytics built in, and maybe some predictive analytics, where a customer using an online banking portal would get essentially some predictions around their finances and potentially advice of how they can manage finances better. So, and technology comes into play, and very strongly in those areas, because you can integrate with a lot of different third-party services. You can use a lot of the patterns from open banking to now start sharing data between a lot of different parties. And the advantage that the banks have is that they still, to this date, they still own the customer experience. So the customer still goes to the bank's online or mobile experience to check on their funds. And it's, what we talk a lot in the strategy sessions, but it's a very unique opportunity, because think of what other applications or what portals do you use that you go to on a daily basis to check something, right? So the banks have that recurring nature of retaining the customer. It's like a news portal almost, but it's for your to check your checkings account or your savings. So they have an opportunity to build on top of that and create much more lasting, much more stickier experiences. So that's a really big area of opportunity that we see right now, and we work on a lot.
You have earned fantastic success and a long list of achievements, but I'm passionate about finding out where it all began and how you got where you are today. So can you tell me your tech startup story, which is particularly interested, and how you funded Devbridge Group with no outside funding at all and grown that business into a $30 million technology powerhouse with nearly 300 employees across 5 global offices? I mean, it's an inspirational story, isn't it?
Thank you. So the data is in, and we're going to be close to $40 million company by end of this year. We're on track for that growth vector, and we're already at 360 employees. So probably going to hit 400 by end of the year. So kind of continuing that 50% growth year over year. The beginnings are they're very humble, really. We all the founding partners of the business. So I'm a computer science graduate with a math minor. I was an engineer, and when you're a techie, and so think about we founded in 2008, 10 years ago. So right around 2007, 2006, you start seeing like this emergence of a more user-friendly web, and then there's all of these releases of mobile devices. So Apple comes out with the first iPhone in, I think, 2007, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe 2008. But anyway, it happens in that time, and so all of a sudden, there's this drastic shift in the way that software is perceived in the world. Because software before was green screens, and maybe we had web applications and websites, but it was very low fidelity. It wasn't really something that you had to have a great experience with. It was just there to do a function. And I think what spurred us and what really triggered us was that as I was working in the industry and my colleagues were working in the industry, you saw a lot of horrible software out there that wasn't great looking. It didn't work well. You had to get training to use it. And then all of a sudden there's this revolution where, and again, we kind of tip the hat to Apple for this, but design and technology can live together, right? And the result is something that's elegant and beautiful and fast, and people want to touch it and use it and so on and so forth. And so when we started this business, we said, the things could be better with tech, with the web, with mobile. Like you could make great enterprise software that is actually really useful to use and not a pain and not something that you need to spend millions and millions of dollars to train your users in. So that was the founding ideal of like just rejecting mediocrity and pursuing kind of this mastery or ability to make great things. So the several of us that founded the company, there were 5 of us back in the day, we were consulting on the side kind of on weekends and nights. And what we realized was that we kind of had enough business at one point to just start doing this full time. And we had a great advisor that said, listen, guys, you just need to jump on this train. It's you guys already have momentum. You just need to do it and take the risk and quit your day jobs and start doing this. So we did. So we kind of quit our day jobs. And it was funny because one of the partners, Thomas, he just had his firstborn. And so that's, ideal time to quit your stable, well-paying job is when you have your first kid. Yeah. So yeah, his wife appreciated that, but so we did, and then we took pay cuts essentially to be able to kind of to bootstrap and start doing what we wanted to do. So that's kind of there's a funny story. I don't know how much time we have, but when we founded, we moved into this basement, and it's a very dingy basement in an old office building that's like a couple of stories tall, and the office building, it wasn't in the greatest of neighborhoods. It was close to the international airport, the O'Hare Airport in Chicago. So it's kind of like a semi-suburb. It's an industrial suburb. It's not very glamorous, not really all that techy. Actually, not techy at all. And we're in a basement, and so it's really just a big room where we're all working. And what we did was when we opened the office, we bought some furniture, and IKEA came to the rescue, and then we decided to buy a coffee machine, and we took a tally, and the amount of money that we spent on all of the furniture in the office was less than the amount of money we spent on the coffee machine. So we were, we had our priorities straight as engineers, and that's something that I still remember, and we kind of laugh about that.
I love it. I also love the fact that you were founded on that belief that no software should be mediocre. And I've got to ask, was that inspired by your experience with mediocre software as well?
It was inspired by my experience with mediocre enterprises. Like I worked at a lot of large corporations, and every time it was just, you go into the office and people are just trudging along, and it's just a way to pass the day, and it just good enough is good enough. And so there was this frustration with that experience and wanting to make something good and something that you could be proud of and something that really held meaning, right? So and the manifestation, you're right, the manifestation was the software, right? Because again, we were in tech and it was good timing. But it was that frustration with mediocrity overall of just how unengaged and how inefficient large businesses could be, that we said, listen, like we could make a much better company and build a much better company, but at the same time build software that allows businesses to be better. So that was really what inspired us.
So your bootstrapping story is going to inspire a lot of people listening, especially if they're just starting out on their startup journey. So what's the best advice that you could possibly offer them about any lessons that you learned along your way?
Good question. I would say, okay, let's do 3 things. 3 things that I can think of. So one thing is, I really believe that when you start a business, you need to be hands-on, do everything yourself type of individual. I think you need to practice whatever the craft is, whatever you're doing, whether it's design or whether it's advertising or technology or whatever else. But you need to be an individual who's not afraid to get your hands dirty and essentially do everything that you need to do to get things moving. Because at the beginning of the business, there really is no way to delegate. You're a 1-person or 2-person or 3-person shop. So you need to really be hands-on. Number 2, I believe that you really need to focus on the customer and really, really try to make the customer whole every time. And even at the expense of making money, even at the expense of not having a win for yourself, the foundation of business development when you're a small company, when you're just starting your own business, is referrals that are word of mouth and relationships you form with your accounts and your clients. So we grew. I mean, and to this day, I think the largest revenue stream or the largest percentage of growth comes from our clients actually recommending us because of the good work that we did, because of the kind of no compromise attitude that we have, even to the point of not being profitable on a specific engagement, but to make it right and to make the client successful. So client always comes first. Yeah. So being focused on the client, then doing everything or being ready to do everything yourself. And then the third one, I think, it's pursue mastery as an organization, or pursue mastery as a craftsman, and don't worry about making money or making it big in the beginning, because the money and the success, it follows really the excellence, right? So as long as you focus on the excellence and the mastery, all other things kind of trickle down from that, because people pick up on that. People recognize the energy and the authenticity and the drive and the passion that you have, and all of those other things, they kind of naturally follow. The right people will come work for you. The right clients will be attracted to you, and again, and eventually you'll grow and you'll be profitable, and so on and so forth. So it's client, bootstrapping, doing it yourself, and then really focusing on just making things great instead of focusing on making money.
Great advice. So I must admit, having spoken to over 500 startups on this podcast, it seems that every overnight success story seems to take 5 to 10 years.
Yeah. There's a saying, right? It's like every overnight success story is 10 years in the making. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I also read a great article from you recently about the false productivity promise of co-location, and how research has actually proven that teams don't have to be in the same building to be effective. And as it turns out, how a team is structured is more important than where they're located. I mean, as someone that's got offices in several parts of the world there, can you expand on that for anyone that's not read it?
What we've seen, right, and this is the structure of the team that we run. So we operate cross-functional, cross-discipline teams. So you have really 3 disciplines in any digital product team. You have product management, you have software engineering, and then you have product design. So design, engineering, product management, you combine those 3 disciplines into a cross-functional team, and that team really is well equipped and self-sustainable to design, define, test, and build software and product. So that is the structure. Now, because of the business model, and because we are geographically distributed around the world, a lot of the times our teams are formed from engineering talent in Lithuania, and engineering in Lithuania, QA in Lithuania, then product design and product management closest to the client, so Toronto, London, and Chicago. And because of that, so it's a self-imposed almost limitation that we had to learn how to deal with. And so we said, okay, well, let's kind of dig in a little bit deeper and research. And are there upsides or downsides to being co-located? Are there efficiency gains, and so on and so forth? So what we run into, or we have run into in the past, is objections of saying, well, no, the team all have to be in one room, and that is really what drives results. And this usually comes from large financial institutions that are somewhat inflexible or potentially archaic in the way that they approach, and maybe they're risk averse and so on. So what we've found and what we've discovered is that really co-location is important for building relationships and building and initially gelling the team. And that is absolutely true. And that's why we always, throughout the year, we have multiple events where we bring in the full team together. So we do 2 annual events where the whole company gets together in a single geography. And then we also do engagement-based co-location, where if we are starting a project, we will ship everyone into the facility, wherever it's a client facility or our offices, and we'll have the team spend a week together to just start, putting pieces together to start the project. However, having said that you kind of need that initial component, you need that bonding and the familiarity with the people that you work with. Once you have that established, and once these teams have worked together on several different engagements over time or several different products, at that time, the physical location of each individual becomes really irrelevant, because in a cross-functional team in an agile, within the agile context where you're driving everything using Scrum and you have a single backlog and you have stories that have well-defined acceptance criteria and you have good process orchestration and stand-ups on a daily basis, you don't have to be physically in one location. You can be remote. You're using Slack, you're using Zoom or GoToMeeting or whatever other communication and video platform that you want. So all you need is that touch point, and all you need is ownership from every single individual so that you're accountable for whatever story that you take on in a given sprint. So I know I'm going into the weeds on the mechanics of distributed agile implementation, but that is, we found that it really has nothing to do with location. Usually, the reason why people tend to lean and say we need, the full product team needs to be in one room is because that provides like a false sense of security or a false sense of productivity. Well, we're just going to go all hands on deck in one room and we're going to, crank it out and everything's going to be okay. But it really, it's I would say it's a means to hide behind mediocrity or team members that are not pulling their weight. If you have a strong team where each individual is a strong contributor and they take ownership and they're mature and they're full-bodied members of the team, those behaviors and that culture drive performance, not the physical location of each individual.
No, I couldn't agree more, especially because I work with people all over the world every single day, and location doesn't even come into it, technology makes it so easy now. But you are heading up a custom software design and development company that partners with Fortune 500 enterprises to accelerate digital products to market. But I've got to ask, are there any trends that you're noticing, and are businesses facing the same challenges when they come to you? And if they are, how are you helping them?
So let me answer this in a way that maybe is unorthodox. There's a lot of buzz in the industry, and every B-rate consultant you talk to will talk to you about blockchain, and we'll talk to you about AI and all of these other emerging tech and machine learning and so on and so forth. And so what we see and what we run into is a lot of organizations now are opening up their own labs where they do innovation and they look into AI and machine learning, and it's all very sexy and there's no actual problem to be solved with a lot of those technologies because they don't really, it's a solution without a problem, especially blockchain.
Yeah.
We appreciate the idea of a distributed ledger, and I get why a distributed ledger actually makes sense to use blockchain for. But for a lot of applications that blockchain is being pigeonholed for, it's actually bloated distributed data storage for problems that could be solved with regular databases and regular storage. So we always try to be like the voice of reason in emerging tech and say, listen, voice is okay. If you need to extend your mobile application with voice control, here are the patterns, here's how you do it, here are potential benefits. But let's make sure that we are actually solving a real problem and not just jumping on the bandwagon because this is something that everyone's talking and writing about. So that's one thing that I always like to get out of the way when we talk about trends and patterns in the industry. The other aspect, which I genuinely think the biggest value is at right now, is if you look across industries, manufacturing, healthcare, financial services, and financial services, by the way, is much more mature from a technology standpoint than someone like a heavy manufacturer of machinery. But if you look across many, many, many industries, most industries, majority of them are still running software that is 30, 35 years old, 20 years old. We have a running joke that we're displacing or kind of refactoring and building and removing software that just turned legal drinking age. And so, but majority of enterprises are still using these platforms. And even though they're working, they're also very monolithic, right? And this is where a majority of the pains for large enterprises comes from is you have monolithic platforms that actually prevent you from adopting best practices of DevOps. They prevent you from adopting best practices from Agile because of the way that the environments are controlled, because of the way that you need to deploy into those platforms. So one of the biggest areas of opportunity that we've seen in the work that we do, and even we tell our clients, is you need to start obfuscating these legacy platforms, introducing services layers that obfuscate the underlying systems, and then slowly start stripping away functionality from those legacy systems and actually building either new or using off-the-shelf products to supplement and modernize that legacy layer. And companies that will do that successfully today will be in business in 10 years. companies that fail to do that, they'll simply be outpaced. Like there's, and you see these trends too. Like you look at Amazon, and Amazon's now getting into logistics, they're getting into payments, they're getting into healthcare, they're getting into all industries because they do have the underlying technology culture that allows them to be nimble in the way that they engage with a customer in a specific industry. All of these different businesses, from manufacturers to financial services companies, that if they continue sitting on their legacy platforms and kind of lacking the motivation to actually invest in modernization of their workflows, of their platforms, they will simply become irrelevant because they will not be able to compete or kind of stay up to date. Or they will have to kind of resort on something that we see a lot is they'll just keep buying the companies that are fast and nimble and adopting that technology and trying to stay relevant that way.
Oh man, you triggered a few war stories and IT flashbacks from my IT career there. I've seen it so many times, whether it be those legacy apps preventing them from being able to upgrade to the latest Windows operating system, or project meetings where, departments just get obsessed with the latest shiny technology, but then they come to the solution afterwards, where it should be the other way around. I mean, it's frustrating, isn't it?
Exactly. And it's interesting because if you look at the workflows in most businesses today, we look at, we're pretty heavily involved now in the power generation industry, so nuclear power plants, right? And you look at how maintenance is done in a nuclear power plant, and they have a room full of binders, and it's a room full of procedure binders, and these binders contain documented procedures that you need to execute when, say, you're maintaining a pump, right? So there's a pump in the field, you need to maintain it, whatever, oil it, check the pressure, adjust it, whatever. So for every single maintenance procedure, you have this binder. And the way they run work orders is a technician will get a paper work order. They'll go into this room, they'll photocopy the pages needed to execute that specific maintenance, algorithm. They'll go out in the field with a binder, and they're going to execute off of paper. And just imagine the amount of opportunities for user error when you're maintaining a nuclear power plant of a piece of paper. One, there's no knowledge retention. Two, there's no analytics or data capture. It's on paper. They literally use a pencil to check box, to check a check mark. And then there's no conditional logic. So as you're executing this procedure, you're just following a checklist. And if there's if a reading says 5, go to page 15, and then the person turns to page 15. What happens, and this is actual data from the field, is that a lot of the times the maintenance folks will trip the plant, and the plant will have to go into emergency shutdown because they executed a procedure incorrectly. Now, again, it doesn't happen often, but when it does, that single shutdown costs them tens of millions of dollars. So just imagine taking that simple example of field service, field maintenance on a nuclear power plant, and modernizing that where it's actually you're executing an algorithm on a tablet. It's actually capturing data. It's actually recommending the approach that you need to take. It's preventative almost. So just that alone, and you can apply that same model across myriads of industries and businesses where they're still doing manual process that's driven off of paper, that's prone to human error. So there's just an incredible amount of opportunity for modernization across the world.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the airline industry that really captures my imagination as well. Because on the outside, you've got your self-check-in desks and the latest technology, but the technology that lies underneath all that is decades old. And I don't know if anyone's leant over at the person or seen a screen when somebody's checking you into a flight. It's like something from 1978, isn't it?
Exactly. No, exactly. You're absolutely right. And think about all of the other platforms or systems, right? Like servicing the aircraft, doing maintenance, tracking all of those things. And they're making progress in certain industries, but it's still a very, very, a very bumpy road.
Well, 2018 has already been a great year for you. I mean, you've won the award there, Entrepreneur of the Year, and the Devbridge Group is heading for that 50% year-on-year growth, which is fantastic. But what's next for both yourself and the Devbridge Group?
So, people, when we hire people into the company, they say, well, you guys have been doing really well. You guys you're planning to sell. And the funny thing that my partners and we talk about, I don't know what I would do with myself if we did that. So no, it's actually not part of our plan. We really thoroughly enjoy building this business and solving these problems for our clients. And in an industry that's ever changing, it's so very precious to be at the cusp of everything that's happening and the tech that's emerging. So we really thoroughly enjoy building it. And actually, we do have a plan for the next 5 years. We want to continue kind of maintaining that 50% growth. And so we have a financial goal of essentially reaching, 150, $200 million revenue within the next 5 years. So kind of targeting 2022, 23 to continue that growth and potentially expanding into new geographies too, because we see opportunities, like I said, in the SAE area with Singapore and we like the East Coast. We like Europe. We're getting more and more clients in France and in London. So it's exciting. It's potentially maybe some new industries as well, but that's kind of the plan.
And that, my friend, is why you're not sitting on a beach drinking cocktails after selling your company and you've won Entrepreneur of the Year. That's what's in your blood, isn't it?
Yeah, no, I thoroughly enjoy this, and I think you need to go and sit on that beach for a little bit because you do tend to burn out. So yeah. I think there's a balance of work and pleasure, but I think again, I think I try to simulate this idea of, okay, so I don't have to work anymore, and financially I don't need to work anymore. So that would be fun, like sailing on a boat off into the sunset. That's fun as a concept. But then I'm starting to think, okay, so I've been doing this for 2 weeks now. I'm still on that damn boat.
Yeah.
Like, what do I do with myself? Like, I need my mind to be occupied. I need some wins, right?
Yeah.
Unless maybe I get into some kind of deep sea diving and shark hunting or something. I don't know.
No, it's so true, because I think if you do have money worries or money concerns, there is a bit of an idealistic vision that you can just earn it, have enough money in the bank and then just do nothing, watch Netflix and sit on a boat. But like you say, right. You need a reason to get out of bed in the morning. You need a purpose, don't you? Absolutely.
And it's also a purpose to get out, but also what I personally think you need growth, right? You need growth for yourself, and it's fun to grow the business. But I think if even for executives and leaders of companies, it's great that the business is successful, but you always on a daily basis need to be reevaluating and saying, is what I'm doing actually changing the way I am and the type of person I am? Is it improving my skill set? Am I, maybe I was really focused on people development and I was doing a lot of training and hiring and coaching the team. But maybe I've reached a point where I feel like I've reached mastery. And what does the next step look like? Do I focus on building a world-class sales organization? So I think for all of us, no matter the seasonality, no matter the maturity of the business or where you are in that business, I think we always need to focus on, one, reaching for goals, but then also, is there personal growth and challenge in that day-to-day? Because if you don't have that growth, I think even a very financially successful business will become mundane and will become the proverbial sailboat, because the business will be like sitting on that sailboat where you have to do nothing and you're learning nothing and you're not challenged anymore. So it's that seeking out of that growth all the time.
Absolutely. I'm sure you're going to have inspired a lot of people listening all over the world today. But for anyone that does want to find out more information or carry on that conversation that we started today, can you remind the listeners of where they can find you guys online, and also contact a member of your team if they have any questions?
No, of course. I mean, we're at devbridge.com. So that's devbridge.com, like development bridge. You can find us there. I'm also on Twitter at NeedOptic, so NeedOptic, as well as LinkedIn, and I'm sure you'll have a link to my weird long name on there. So folks definitely can find us and tweet me or connect with me on LinkedIn.
I will add those links to the show notes as promised, so people can just click on your name and get all the info that they need. But it's been an inspirational chat. I've really enjoyed talking with you today. But more than anything, just a big thank you for coming on and sharing that story, because I think it's going to be so valuable to people listening.
Oh, of course, and I appreciate you guys having me. And again, I always, you can probably tell, but I love talking about the industry. I think it's probably one of the most exciting industries to be in at this time in our history. So it's a passion of mine, and I love sharing these stories. So thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
If you're on your own startup journey, there are so many lessons and takeaways from today's episode. And I love how he's earned his success of bootstrapping his way to a business approaching a $40 million valuation and a 50% year-on-year growth. It's a phenomenal achievement. But it's his lessons about being patient, playing that long game, and even when you do have it all, don't just walk away and live on a beach for the rest of your days. It might sound romantic now when you're stuck in your daily routine, but after a few weeks when your skin starts to resemble George Hamilton and you feel brain rot and boredom setting in, it's time to find your purpose again. So let me throw this out to you. What is your purpose? And what do you think of all the points raised in today's show? As always, email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com, or tweet me at Neil C. Hughes. But I'm afraid we're out of time, so to each and every one of you, enjoy the rest of your day. A huge thank you for listening. Hope you'll join me again tomorrow. And until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thanks for listening to the Tech Blog Writer Podcast. Until next time, remember, technology is best when it brings people together.